Just before we open up any questions, I got a couple of things. I just, off the top, would like to thank all the media for your coverage throughout the year. Whenever we have something to say, you guys drop everything and come running, and we appreciate it. One of the great things about working in a Canadian market is the coverage we get. You guys are the conduit to our fans, so we appreciate your work, and thank you for the year. I do want to congratulate the Edmonton Oilers, Kenny Holland, Jay Ridcroft. They played a heck of a series, and they're fully deserving of moving on. So congratulations to them. I guess just before we get into questions, things are still pretty fresh and raw, as I hope you can appreciate. So I'm not very eloquent at the best of times. So even with it being this fresh, we accomplished some things this year. We're going to need sort of a sober second thought here in the coming days. But there's some things that obviously, it was a hell of a regular season. I think our team, took a step in our first round. It was a tight series. We had to overcome some things. We were behind in the series, some things that, quite frankly, this group hasn't done. We played a Game 7 and found a way to win a Game 7. So there's certainly some things you can look back to and be very proud of as the group. There's an empty feeling today because I think there was more there. I look at that series, and the team that played the best won the series. I think you have to acknowledge that. I don't think we put what's empty for me is I don't think we put our game on the ice. There's times in this business when you get beat and you tip your hat to the better foe. I just didn't think we established an identity and a style of play that I don't think we, for a number of reasons, and some will have to find out, we never got to it in the second round. And you have to acknowledge the opponent, and we'll figure out why internally that didn't happen. But that leaves a real empty feeling because I think there was more there that we could have given. So on that note, available for any questions if you got any.
Is it safe to say you'd like to get the Johnny Gaudreau situation wrapped up as soon as possible?
That's a pretty hard-hitting reporter right there, Eric. Yeah, fair to say. Yeah, I mean, Johnny, I've said this all year, and I know it's been a talking point. It really hasn't been a talking point internally for us. I spoke with John and Lewis, and we made an agreement that we're going to focus on hockey, and Lewis and I would work in the background to on the contract, and that's certainly, we have some contracts to get done, Johnny and Matthew, and you guys know the list. But I've said this, and I've said it to John. I think he's a Calgary Flame, and we want to make him a Calgary Flame for a long time, and we're going to do everything we possibly can to make that happen. We saw what he's capable of. I've believed in this guy since the day I walked through the doors here, and so certainly that's an important piece of business that we got to take care of.
Is his contract intertwined with Matthews in any way?
Every contract is intertwined, Eric, in terms of, you at the end of the day, you live in a cap world where you got 23 mouths to feed, and you treat everybody fairly, but not everybody gets treated the same, or they'd all make the same. So everything, it's a puzzle. But, we're going to do, I don't know what else to say other than we're going to do everything we possibly can to get him signed. I know people think, there's been lots of written and lots talked about it. I think, we want him to be a Calgary Flame. He's been one his whole career. I think he's got a chance to be one of the greatest ever to play in the history of the franchise, and there's been some great ones. So we're hopeful that hopefully we can get it done.
Have there been conversations throughout the year with some of the other players, like Andrew Mangiapane, for example, his agent, or did you kind of take that blanket, like, we'll just do this in the summer?
You know what, Haley? I don't like to. Those that have been around for a while, they realize I don't like to talk publicly about it, and I know it's hard because I try to help you guys do your jobs, and like I said to you before, you're the conduit to our fan base, and our fan base wants to know what's going on. But I've learned, I've been in this business a long time, it just doesn't do the process any good. So we've touched base with all the agents and all the representatives and basically all the players and kept them in the loop with everything that's going on. I just don't speak about it publicly until we can get something finalized. And my hope is we've got some guys to sign. My hope is we get them all signed, and that's what we're going to try to start starting today.
There's a lot of talk about whether this season was ultimately a success or not, based on expectations before the season and how those expectations tend to grow 2 days after the series ended. What's your thought? Is it a successful season by and large?
Well, you know what, Salum, the expectations on the outside are different than the expectations. I know there was probably very few expectations from the group sitting in front of me. Reading some of your stuff, my man Peter and Sean keep me really advised of all the great stuff you guys are writing about, and so I don't know what the expectations was from the outside. I think when you're sitting here in the business that we're in, and there's still hockey, and I'm talking to you guys, and there's still hockey games to be played, we haven't reached the ultimate success. There's things certainly to be proud of, but as I said, it's probably a long-winded answer, Salam. It's I think there was still more in the tank here. You know, that's why I said there's an empty feeling here today, because, you know, there's times you play and you know what, we weren't good enough. You know, we just weren't good enough. I don't feel like that with our group. We didn't play well enough. I think our team was good enough, but we didn't get to the game that had made us successful all year. And again, there's two teams on the ice every night, right? So you have to tip your hat to the opponent. But I just feel there was more there. I didn't think we were I thought there was still more there to give.
Brett, I know that it's still early and still pretty close to the end of the series, but from what you've been able to ascertain so far, why weren't you able to get to your game the way you wanted to against it?
Good question, Pat. I'd love to be able to tell you right now, and if we knew exactly, we would have fixed it before we got to it. I just look at it. You know, it became really an open game. You know, if you guys were all watching the Dallas series, it was it was like ground warfare. It was hard to get to the net. There was no space, no room, and then that first game, it just looked like it was a different game, right? There was a lot of space, there was a lot of room. We got into a, and it wasn't. We didn't choose to do it, but we got into a sort of a rush game and a trade chance game. And you know, I think in a lot of ways, Game 1 almost set the table for the series. And you know, it made for, you know, it was unique, but that's not how we're built, and that's not how we're going to be successful. And so why was that? You know, listen, they've got, you know, I know we saw it firsthand. Connor's playing at a level that I don't think many people have seen before, but it's not just Connor. I mean, they had a lot of guys over there that played well. And but if for those of you that saw this team play the first 84 games of the year and then saw those last 5, it was a different game, right? And I don't know exactly why that happened. Got some theories, got some ideas, but we've got to drill down on it.
So does it feel different than 2019 and 2020? Because this isn't the first time that at the end of a sort of playoff round there have been questions about why the team didn't manage to sort of meet.
Yeah, it's, you know what, Danny, anytime you lose, you're always going to be questioned, and that's the nature of the beast. For us, it is different. It is a different animal. I think in the Colorado series, we had a really good regular season. I thought we weren't even in that series. I think we steamrolled, right? This one is different. Now, at the end of the day, I can sit here and say it's different. The result's the same, but in my chair, you have to you hear it all the time, but it is very much process driven, right? And I thought our process was right. I think the result may be the same, but to me, this team has taken some big steps. Nobody wants to hear it, but you got to keep knocking on the door. You got to keep knocking on the door. You got to keep knocking on the door. And at the end of the day, I know we can talk about for the last 50 years, we haven't done this. The organization, this player group can't take responsibility for the last 50 years. What they can, like to me, 19, that was sort of the start of this group of, okay, now, then we went through a 2-year period where the world got turned upside down, okay? Then we went into a bubble, and, we took some steps in the bubble. We had a mini-series, whatever you want to call it, against Winnipeg. To me, again, we lost to a team that went to the final, but I thought we took some steps. Last year was a bad year, okay? We've talked ad nauseum, maybe some ideas. So to me, you got to keep, you keep knocking on the door. You keep knocking on the door. You look at a team last night in Colorado, they got to the second round for the first time in 20 years. Now, that group of players, they shouldn't be taking the burden for 20 years, but it's probably 5 or 6 years for that team. You keep knocking on the door. Tampa Bay, right? Tampa Bay, before they won, there was some pain before you win. So as much as we all want it, and when it doesn't happen, there's going to be criticism, and it should start right at the top. It always should. And I fully am responsible, but the job is to you keep tweaking, and you get the group back, and you get that experience. This group now goes into next year with an experience of winning a Game 7, winning when we're all sitting here wondering, going into an overtime of Game 7. Those are all things you can't get the experience. It's like talking to a young player about playing against an NHL player. You have to live it. So now they've got that in their toolbox a little bit. So to me, it feels different. You take the experience from it. You take a step back and you find out how you can make yourselves a little bit better.
Brad, with what you said about your entire group not getting to this game in the second round, has there been too much focus on criticism of your goaltender?
Well, I go to war with that goaltender any day of the week at all. He'd be the first one to tell you he didn't get to his game either. But let's go back, and there's a lot of things that happened before the puck went in the net, before it got to Jacob, that didn't go right. Okay, so as I said in that series, we didn't look like ourselves. The chances that we were giving up didn't look like ourselves. Like, you can go back and yeah, you need good goaltending. You just do. But there's a lot of things that went wrong. The final act is the play at the net. But back up the tape, 40 seconds. There's some things that happened before it got to the net. And that's part of playing the position, is you're ultimately going to, right? You always get the glory or the scorn if it doesn't go right. But to me, there's a lot of stuff we could have been done differently and better before it got to Jacob. So, but he'd be the first one to tell you. I haven't seen, I'm sure you guys have talked. He probably sat up here and said he could be better. But I put it, all of us, myself, everybody, we weren't good enough to be advancing.
Brad, we talked to Chris Tanev earlier. He talked to us about his injury. How healthy was your group in general in this series?
Well, I don't think there's anybody, Ryan, that's healthy. When you get to the end of the regular season, nobody's healthy, right? I always say the healthiest you are is training camp, and it gets worse from there. From day one of training camp, everybody's doing good for the most part, and then. But so we had guys that were playing through. Chris is he had dislocated his shoulder on the play in Game 6. And what he played through is, I think we all have come to appreciate Chris Tanev and just the warrior mentality he has. We had several other guys that were dealing with stuff. At this point in time, he's the only player that's going to have surgery. Nikita I think he had 2 cracked ribs that happened in the Dallas series. He slid into the net. He had kind of a breakaway there and slid into the net. Luch was dealing with, he had a real significant AC joint sprain. Oliver had a shoulder he was dealing with. Andrew, I think it was with a wrist. Matthew banged up his hand. And I'm saying this, I'm probably leaving some guys out, but when you get to game, you factor in exhibition, you get to game 90 something. Yeah, everybody's dealing with something. But at this point in time, I haven't met with Kent yet, and the medical staff, they're going through it. But I believe, unless something changes, that Chris is the only one that he'll have surgery on Wednesday.
Regarding Chris Tanev, I know we saw the step that Oliver Shillington took with him alongside him this year, and we saw what your team looked like throughout much of the Edmonton series without Chris. Is it too simplistic to sort of look at Chris's impact and sort of say, one of the contributing factors to sitting here right now is that you didn't have Chris Tanev the way you wanted to have him in that first few part of the series?
Yeah, I think it's the truth, right? When you lose good players, it has an impact. So you take, and the way you have to look at it is, okay, when you take out Chris Tanev, you look at the minutes, right? You look at the minutes, you look at the situational minutes, power, penalty kill, hard match against top players. So it certainly had an impact, but that's the playoffs, right? I think there's a team playing in Tampa that lost Braden Point in Game 7, I think, in Toronto, and they won that game and won. So it's why you build depth. It's why you need, if you're going to go to where you ultimately want to get to, you're going to have injuries. Players are going to play through stuff. Players may not be able to play. So it can't be an excuse, but is it a contributing factor? You take a top player out, a top matchup defenseman, when you're playing a team with the firepower of Edmonton, it certainly had played an impact. But you need others to step up, and I think a lot of guys did an admirable job. We went into a Game 7 without Chris. You see Stoney, Stoney came off the bench. He's like a reliever that sits out in the bullpen, and you tap him, and he comes in and gives you everything he can. But that's playoff hockey. You're gonna miss people, and it can't be an excuse why you didn't move on.
Sorry, you always have great value for people and leadership, and starting with, having Tanev and Markstrom for like a full season. Is this now going forward? Do you feel like the guys in that room are now better equipped going forward to take this step and turn it into the next step as a result of that?
I think so. I really believe in the group, and it's a very close knit group, but it's got leadership, and as I said earlier, Pete, like, it's an experience. You always come out of these. You say we learn lessons. Well, you only learn lessons if you learn them, right? But the challenge now for everybody is, because you had the regular season you had, and because whatever it is you did, success is like that. It doesn't guarantee you anything. So it happens, and you have to move on. So what you have to do then is and that's what makes losing in the playoffs difficult, is the first thing that goes through your mind. Now you got to do it all over again, right? Now you got to start day 1 of training camp. You hear it all the time, and it's not just motherhood speak. It's hard to make the playoffs. I mean, you can make a case that you might have to get 98 to 100 points to make the playoffs. So I believe in that group. We've got work to do this summer. We've got to find a way to be better. Staying the same is death. So you have to get better. We have to get 10, 15% better internally. We've got to see if there's tweaks that we can do to the roster to make it better. But I think there's great leadership in the two guys that you talked about there, and others that are calming voices in here. But at the end of the day, we didn't accomplish. It's like the student. Sometimes the student maxes out. Maybe the student's a B student, right? And you max out. So you're always looking to max out. I think we left some on the table here, and that's what leaves you with a little empty feeling. Now you got to find out why, and you got to improve.
Brad, what was Darryl able to do in a full
full season with this group in terms of culture change?
Well, I think everybody talks about culture change, and sometimes like to me, culture is it's your habits, it's your environment, it's doing the right things, it's doing those mundane, miserable things over and over every day that make you better, and that's what Daryl does. Daryl is, I said it the day we introduced him, accountability, the ability to push people, structure, maximizing individuals. I don't think it's a coincidence that people had career years. He pushes people to achieve things, and it's not always comfortable. But this what we ask people to do, and being successful in any walk of life is not easy. The human nature is to survive, right? It's to just to survive. So to be really good is hard. And he pushes people to be really, really good. And so he's brought structure, he's brought accountability to this group, and the group's embraced it, And so I've said it time and time again, there's a reason why I think he's, I think it'd be a crying shame if he's not named the coach of the year. And I think that there aren't a lot of sureties in life. That should be one of them. But I think he's done a marvelous job.
Brad, can you talk about, just in regards to some of the things you just commented on, for the challenges for this team, trying to build a winner and build upon this stepping stone for you, and the challenges with free agents? Is that something, perhaps this is the hardest you've had to deal with in your tenure as a GM?
That's the job, Moses. Like there's 31 other selfish buggers out there that are trying to win too. Like it's a pretty competitive business, right? If they all weren't trying to win, it'd be a lot easier. But the fact that we have people that need new contracts that are top players, that's always a challenge, right? But there was challenges a year ago. I mean, last year we sat here and we were going through an expansion draft where we had to make a difficult decision with our captain, right? There's going to be challenges a year from now. There's going to be, all 31 other teams have challenges. So that's just the nature of the business. You put your head down and you pick away at each file, and you try to make your team better every year. That's my job. And so some of that's internal growth, and I've said that lots of times. Like everybody thinks there's going to be the white horse riding in from the outside. We got better this year because there was growth from within, right? That's how you grow. That's how you grow your organization, and and then you fill in around, and you keep picking away at it. So there's challenges this summer, but that's our job, and we're not the only one with it.
Does the fact that your team took the steps that it did from that internal growth make the summer feel a little bit easier than it has, despite the challenges of contracts and working season?
You know what, Haley? It like I said, I think it doesn't feel like it today, but I think we're knocking on the door. Like I think we're there now. We weren't good enough, so is that we got to find out why? But I don't think Listen, we've got significant players that you've got to get contractually taken care of. That's just part of the business. Every year you have that, right? So we'll deal with that as best we possibly can. But then we get that core group back together, and then you look at how do you tweak it, and but I do have, what gives me confidence is, as Peter said, there's some really good men in that room, and they care deeply, and they want to be successful, and they know they can be better, and they want to win, and we all feel bad. Like I know our fan base feels badly. I can comfort them. Nobody feels worse than the 23 guys in that room. I can guarantee you. Nobody feels worse when they lose than they do. And nobody wants to have more success than they do. So that's what gives me a lot of it. They're good men, and they're competitive, and they want to be successful. And now we gotta get a couple of them signed, and we gotta continue to tweak the group and make it better.
How is Sean Monahan doing in his recovery?
Monty, he's doing good, Danny. He's I don't know if I've talked about Sean here since he had his surgery back in, I want to say, the first week of April. I want to say that. And he's been here ever since, you know, and he's been, you know, he's doing, you know, to give you an example, I think he's 5 or 6 weeks ahead of, like, he had the similar surgery on the other hip last year, and he's 5 weeks, 6 weeks ahead of where he had that one last year, and he came back for camp. He works at it, so he's been here working with our rehab, and I think he's going to be skating in the next couple of weeks. So he's doing well.
Brad, was Matthews had an injury the result of a fight?
Yeah, he banged it up a little bit.
And does that give you any pause about a first line player dropping his gloves, or is that part of Matthews' game?
No, I've said about Matt. You know, I would much rather take a player that sometimes you got to pull the reins in than you have to brand in the ass and get him going. And he is one that you can't take that part away from him. He's smart enough. He's involved in the game, and so that part is, I think, what makes him a little bit unique, quite frankly, and you don't ever want to take that part of it, but he's smart enough to know when where that line is, and he straddles it pretty good.